Welcome everybody to today's session. We are here to discuss accelerating your workflows to improve your return on investment with your CAD software at your firm. We're going to cover a number of different ways in which you can start investing in your firm's success today. My name is Kyle Groves. I am an EIT and a senior technical specialist with ATG USA. I'll be joined in the second half of this presentation with my friend and colleague, Brian Levendowski, professional engineer, from CTC Software. He's their civil product lead. Real quick, first we'll go over the agenda. As I hinted at before, this will be a dual presentation. I'm going to go through first and cover ATG USA's service offerings and an overview of that. And then after, Brian Levendowski is going to go through what CTC has to offer for Civil 3D productivity add-ons. He'll cover some live demos of a couple of different tools in both their project suite for most users most of the time, as well as the manager suite, which is supposed to help your CAD management tasks go by a lot more smoothly and a lot more quickly. I'll go over who ATG is, what we do, and why we do it. I will also talk about why your software efficiency is so important and why an entire industry has sprung up around helping you out with that. Then we'll cover specifically how ATG can help you through training, CAD Management Consulting, as well as production services. ATG USA is a reseller, and we do sell Autodesk products. However, we're more than just a reseller. We're your technology partner. While I'm not going to cover all of the software and other partnerships that ATG has outside of Autodesk, it is important for me to mention that we are a platinum partner. This is the highest category of partner by volume and business done that Autodesk can rank, and we have a footprint of people all over the United States. We're in every time zone. We have 3 major offices as well as a really wide amount of a distributed workforce at all levels of our company. We are an AEC-focused architecture, engineering, and construction reseller firm. This means that we have our eye specifically on serving people interested in civil and infrastructure design, as well as the building space, including both architecture, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, as well as reality capture. So we have both airborne drones as well as terrestrial laser scanners that we can use to help make your assessment of those existing conditions faster and easier to incorporate into the rest of your projects. Also, we have a fantastic technical team that kind of does 2 broad things. First off, we have support. This is free for all of ATG's Autodesk subscribers, and our support team has just been killing it in 2020. We're averaging about 80 cases across the company closed every single day. And the bulk of today's presentation, I'm going to be talking about our service offerings, both from a consulting perspective, as well as what we like to call our production services. Before we get into that, though, I want to take a brief detour and talk about why it's so important for us to be efficient with the software that we use. Our pressure as workers to stay billable is relentless. I know 2020 has been a heck of a year for so many companies across the board, and if you're not billing, you're not bringing in revenue, and that has a lot of implications for management and how the company is performing. So with that in mind, we also are living in a digital technological age. And the fact of the matter is that our design professionals have to use software to get things done in a productive manner. Now, we need to do this because humans are really smart and we're really creative and we've got all these problem-solving skills, but we're slow and we can have a tendency to be inaccurate. Software and hardware, however, is fast and it is accurate, but it's really rigid, and unless we have it set up correctly, it's not going to help us very much. Additionally, every task, whether it's digital, analog, work, personal, every task that we work on does have a best tool that we can use for that job. Learning how to use those tools effectively, though, especially from a software perspective, has 2 different halves. The first of which is what I like to call buttonology. Where's the button? What does it do? How do I use it in a very general sense? And you can find a lot of that online or through the help documentation. But the most important part is once we understand what all of these buttons do, how are we going to use them and string them together in the right order to give us a satisfactory result on the outset? And that is where workflows come into play. Workflows are so important. I actually led a panel here last year on how firms were using workflows and talking all about that. I wrote a nearly 20-page white paper. It's posted on the ATG website this summer. I've been obsessed with workflows for the last about year and a half of my professional life. And it's because if you have the right workflow, you can get a lot of really cool stuff done, and you can really leverage that power of your software to help you out in your designs. And frankly, when we have that intersection with our CAD work and our CAD management, it's important because good workflows need good content, and good content needs good workflow in order to justify the input. So they really do go hand in hand. Now that we've got that covered, let's talk about ATG's first and primary offering, and this is what a lot of resellers do, but it's software training. So our software training is first and foremost going to be customized for your needs at your firm. We're going to start this off by doing a pre-training scoping call, and then we'll put together a custom statement of work. It's ATG's general word for a proposal. But we'll put together that custom SOW so that you know exactly what we're going to be training on, and in most cases, what we're not going to cover. This means that our sessions get to be right-sized. So if we're going to talk about a certain topic, we're going to make sure that it's going to fit into your schedule. Full-day trainings don't work for everybody, and I don't know about you guys, but giving a 40-hour, 5 days in a row, 8-hour training is really hard to give. It's got to be even harder to sit through. So we want to make sure that we're fitting your time to learn in conveniently with your time to do. We're also going to make sure that that pace is going to hit up and match with the size of our session. So whether that is, like I mentioned, 5 days in a row, 8 hours worth of training to get to 40 hours, or if you want to do 1 or 2 half days a week or spread those out anytime, we're going to work with you to make sure that your learning schedule fits in with your doing schedule on your project workload. Also, these custom trainings aren't just going to be canned and out of the box and teaching from the book using the book data set with no flexibility. We're going to cater to your skill levels and to the roles of the people that you're training. Your hardcore drafters don't need to have all of that essentials review. And if your project managers are trying to learn how they can use the software to more efficiently review designs, we're not going to teach them all the ins and outs of how to use corridors and modify their code sets. It's just not a good match, and we're going to make sure that we get that figured out ahead of time to match all of that up. Lastly, I do want to mention that ATG offers both remote, what we call Live 360 training, as well as in-person training. Now, at the time of this recording, mid-September 2020, COVID-19 has a very wide spectrum of firms being comfortable bringing people into their office or going to that office. Right now, ATG is willing to travel and come in and see you. Otherwise, we've had a lot of success and a lot of really great outcomes with our remote internet-based training. The other thing that our training is going to be is it's going to be very focused. So with this, we are going to teach you for what you do. And in the course of that scoping process ahead of time, we're going to be recommending the best solutions for what it is you're trying to get accomplished. Also, we're going to make sure that we talk to you ahead of time and throughout the course of the training so that we can incorporate the challenges that you're already facing or that you've recently faced from your projects so that we can get those solved and answer the really important questions while you have our ear. Next, I'd like to cover CAD Management Consulting, which is a really big topic. But as I just mentioned, in order for our users to be efficient, they have to know what these buttons do, and we have to have a competent workflow for them to string together to achieve our desired result. And content and workflow really do go together hand in hand. So when you're trying to think about this, how you're going to use your tools the most effectively, you need to have a bigger plan, and you need to manage how you're using your CAD software. Unfortunately, there are a lot of incentives working against firms that aren't Kimley Horn sized or those really, really big firms. So for those small and those medium-sized firms, we're going to find out pretty quickly that working with the software is not the same as customizing it. I know how to drive my car, but I'm not sure I'm ready to go replace my shocks all by myself or to put in my turbocharger. So most of our power users at our firms have walked into that wall at one point or another. Also, management has a very different viewpoint on how you should be spending your time for CAD management tasks versus your billable project tasks. Most of the time, CAD management isn't billable. And if it's not bringing in revenue, again, that's something that management is going to be paying really close attention to. So oftentimes, these folks who are participating in the CAD management without a proper CAD management role, they're doing it on their time, nights, weekends, time away from the family, time away from fun activities. So we want to help make sure that your management team has a proper perspective on what they want you to be doing and what's good for the business. Also, a lot of this stuff gets into really into the weeds, and we have detailed niche knowledge that you either need to perfectly bookmark and have a little 3-ring binder next time you're going to pull that out in 6 months, or you're going to have to rediscover it every time you come back to that project. And just with a lot of this stuff, aside from the knowledge base for it, getting it set up correctly so that anybody else can use it is full of pitfalls and stumbles for most of the tools that exist inside your CAD software. So this is where ATG can come into play and help your firm out. Number one is we have the experience. In fact, if you go and check out ATG's website at atgusa.com, under our production services tab, you can actually pull up our active civil roster. And right now, at the time of this recording, we've got 10 staff members on the civil team with over 170 years worth of combined experience. Another thing that ATG brings to the table is our exposure. By the virtue of working with all of these different firms on figuring out how to best solve their problems, it means that we've got a lot of experience helping other people solve their problems. So when you come to us with a question of, should we be doing this way? What do you think of our current set of workflows? We can tell you what is and isn't working in a way that's really difficult to achieve in the private business world. Yes, we're here at this conference and we're all here to learn and talk, but how often are you getting in-depth access to your coworkers and your colleagues at the other firms who are sometimes competing with you, and really understanding how they were able to solve their toughest challenges? It's not something that everybody's really comfortable to talk about. Well, at ATG, we've seen it and we can help you with it. Another thing about us is we're constantly developing. You're getting paid most of the time for your projects to do the design and get the deliverable done and make your client happy. Well, learning about how to use the software best is how we get paid and how we make you happy. So we have, on average, a lot more free time to do that research, that development, and to explore more about what's currently possible inside the software. We're also able to provide the right solution with that right-sized commitment. If you're not sure about what it is that is going well with your firm, going wrong with your firm, a really great way that we can get started with that is what we call a business process assessment. Basically, we'll show up, we'll do an interview with you, we'll look through some of your files, and then come up with a report to say, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing well, here's where we're going to go from here. Something of an intermediate, like a paid proposal to get started. But with this, what does ATG all do as far as our CAD management consulting tasks? Well, we can do some of the easy stuff, some of the stuff we've already talked about. Template upgrades, big ones, small ones, some as big as your head. And we also do customized content. So if you want to start using different pipe network parts that have much cleaner labeling built in with your firm, we can do that inside your templates. And we can help you learn how to make that workflow get all new and shiny and dynamic for you. We also do documentation, help you update your CAD manual and make sure that once you've figured something out, that you can go through and communicate this to other people. We'll also do project mentoring. If you're not really sure how you're supposed to use those topics that we covered in the course of your training, or if you're just trying to get something done on a one-off basis, we can come in and help coach you through how to get that done. We also do a lot of larger scale tasks like reconfiguring or updating your deployment configuration and upgrading from one version of your software to the next. We help firms implement tool palettes and modify those. We can help you with your longer term prioritization and your planning on, should we do corridors first or should we upgrade our survey template? Big questions like that, as well as those business process assessments, which I already covered. how we're going to go through doing this really varies for the size of commitment that you're interested in. If you know what you're in for, you know what you want to do, or we can work with you to get to that point, we can do a one-time specific statement of work. Might be lump sum, or it could be time and materials not to exceed. If you have more questions and you've built that trust with ATG that you want to bring in our help on an ongoing basis, we do long-term engagements. I personally am working with five different firms right now to the tune of 16 to 20 to 32 hours per month for each of those different clients to help them go through those big tasks and those small tasks and get their prioritization under control. So as an example, for one of those long-term clients, I just went through the process. We finally figured out that we got done with our corridor updates and it's time to work on pipe networks. So we went through, we rebuilt their catalog and helped get those part families defined correctly so that we could go through and update their templates with all of their part lists and their styles. We figured out what workflow we wanted to use to adapt the Gravity toolset for modeling a water main situation for our plan production. We documented it so that other users could have a reference to go back to and understand all of that. We got some standard details implemented into their corporate tool palettes, and then for any questions that come up in the next ever on how this firm is supposed to use this workflow and this content, then that's where our project mentoring comes into play. People say, hey, Kyle, I thought I was supposed to do this, but it's not working. And we can go through and we can coach them on those active projects. So we've gone through and we've talked about training. How are we going to use this software in the first place? We've talked about CAD management. How are we going to build a long-term vision for maintaining a high-quality CAD environment and a high-quality user base? Those are really great medium-term and long-term fixes, and even training can be great in the short term, but what happens when life goes weird? Well, that's where ATG's production services come into play. 2020 has been a very interesting year, and there's a lot of things that are working against most firms out there these days. Number one is the business cycle. So sometimes there's busy parts of the year, and sometimes there's really light parts of the year. Sometimes the years themselves are light or busy. Your staff might be changing. Perhaps you're having problems with retention. Perhaps you're not able to hire enough people to get the projects done that you have outstanding bids on. So all of this is working in a complex matrix that is affecting what your company is willing to do or able to do as far as hiring commitments or unexpected staffing changes. What's going to happen if your power user and your project manager get in a mild car accident and they're out of work for 2 weeks and there's a project deadline in there? What are you going to do when those sorts of things go wrong? Or perhaps you've got a good design, but your drafting and your modeling staff aren't quite at the point where they can get the deliverable where or when it needs to be done by. So this is where ATG can come into play. Again, we have that experience. All of our staff are hired with industry experience. While we appreciate what we can do with younger staff that are fresh out of school, we really want our team to know what it's like to do what you're doing. So with this, we're also much more available when we're needed. You don't have to worry about hiring a new drafting staff or a new drafting capable engineer if you don't think you're going to have the workload to support them in the next 3 to 9 months. Yes, you may have the work now, but what about later? So we can be there to step in when we're needed, and we can be gone from your ledgers when we're not. We do have staff in all U.S. time zones throughout the continental 48. Of course, we've done a good number of projects in Hawaii, and we're open to definitely doing them in Alaska too. But we've got all those different time zones covered. So no matter what time of the business day it is, we've usually got somebody on hand who can help work with you in your projects. Also, if you decide to engage in a production services agreement with ATG, this is going to give us a really deep insight for how your projects are working, what is going well with your software right now, and what you could use some improvement on. So this is a great way for you to get something and for us to get something. Once we're done with this project, we get it out the door, then we can talk about, all right, we've alleviated this short-term need for you. How can we help you plan and grow for the future? With these, though, it is important to note what you, as the client firm for us, is responsible for versus what ATG is responsible for. So when we're doing these production jobs, you're providing those design components. You're saying, this is the alignment, these are all the vertical curves along my profile, so on and so forth, grading limits, grading slopes, etc. You're going to be going through the process of supervising the red lines, and you will be stamping the plans and taking all design responsibility. That's something that ATG's not going to participate in. We're not going to. We can give you advice on how the software works and whatever else, but ultimately you're taking responsibility for your design decisions. What we're going to do is we're going to build that CAD model for you. If necessary, we can definitely cut those sheets and get your PDF plan set put together, as well as producing other deliverables. Maybe it's an animation or a visualization. Maybe it's something else that we've agreed to do as part of that whole scoping process on the outset. But with these production services, we're here to help you with those short-term needs when your hiring and workload schedule might not quite be in alignment. Help you get those done on time and on budget. So with that, does bring me to my conclusion of the Why ATG presentation of today. I'm going to go ahead and get this wrapped up so that Brian can show off all those really cool Sim Project and Sim Manager Suite tools. So first of all, hopefully we've learned that ATG isn't just another Autodesk reseller. We're the US-based technology partner that you deserve. While we do sell Autodesk products, we also partner with many other firms to do both software and hardware solutions. We also learned that ATG can train your staff to use your software better so that you can spend more time on good designs instead of updating your M-text and your polyline contours in your 2D AutoCAD drawing. Also, ATG can help you through the hurdles of CAD management to support your users of all skill levels and all of your roles, while still protecting the revenue potential of your best users and making you look good on your timesheets. Just like with our CAD management, we can be there when you need us. We can be there when you don't, or we cannot be there when you don't. If your workload, staffing, or deadlines get into trouble, any combination of the three, ATG can help get your projects to the finish line on time and on budget with our production services. Lastly, ATG is the exclusive reseller of CTC software products in the United States, and Brian Levendowski is going to give us more on that in, well, just a minute. So with that, I do want to say, go ahead, thank you everybody. We are on social media. Both CTC and ATG are on LinkedIn and ATG. Go ahead and check those links out down there at the bottom. And thank you for your time. After Brian's presentation, I will be here for questions.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Kyle Groves. Great introduction to all the great services and offerings from ATG. My name is Brian Levendowski. I am the product manager at CTC Software, and I want to talk to you a bit about some of the offerings from CTC Software. We work in close partnership with ATG, and what we do is we create applications that run right within Civil 3D and Revit, and today we're going to focus, of course, on Civil 3D. We make software that works natively with Civil 3D. It works with any standards, any projects, whether it's WIS.dot projects or private projects. It doesn't matter. It works with any standards or workflow. Let's jump into Civil 3D, and let me touch on some grading workflows. Now, natively in Civil 3D, there's a few different grading applications. For linear applications, like roadways, we would often be using corridors. There's also feature lines, and there's also Kogel points out there. And while those latter tool sets are more flexible, they're very tedious to work with. Take, for example, a simple commercial site like this, where I've got a pond to grade out. Now let's go into AutoGrader. This is the first of one of the CTC apps. And what we can do in here is to create a set of grading families. For example, I've got a building site pond. If I dive into the details of this grading family, at the top here we can see I've got a filter set to grab feature lines on this layer. Okay, found one. It's that one I have selected out here. And then from here, what I can do is spell out any number of additional feature lines for each row. And I can relate those to the parent or to a previous, what we call child feature line. And so I'm using distance at slope, but we can use distance to relative elevation, slope to surface, all sorts of different options here. So AutoGrader will create a new feature line for each one of these grade breaks in our pond. And it'll even manage our surfaces. So it'll add those feature lines to our surface as a break line, and it'll do it with the settings I specify in here. So let's go ahead and click Run for the first time with this grading family. And what you're going to see is feature lines created automatically, as well as them being added to the surface. Now what we generated, again, are just native feature lines, okay? But we have a rule set that dictates how they're related to a set of parent feature lines. And with that, everything becomes pseudo-dynamic in this way, so that if there's a change to the shape of our pond, perhaps we need more storage capacity. If I come back into AutoGrader and I simply click Run on that grading family again, it's going to refresh everything based on that parent feature line. Huge time savings, and it helps keep everything straight because everything's built on these primary or these parent feature lines. It's kind of like a corridor built on alignment and a profile. Let's look at one more example here. You can imagine in a parking lot like this, right? It gets pretty detailed, grading out our gutter lines and then running stepped offsets for tops of curbs and backs of curbs and so forth. This is another great candidate for AutoGrader. This will be called Curb. I'm going to use a filter that references the layers with the word gutter in them. And when I do that, it's going to reference 6 parent feature lines. So I've drawn my gutter feature lines out here with some preliminary grading concepts attached. And from here I can now start to attach or spell out additional feature lines that will be created based on the parent feature line. So this first one, I'm going to go at distance to relative elevation, 0.167 and a height of 0.5. I'm going to create another one. This one will be the back of curb. And this one is going to anchor to the top one. So that's this feature line that'll be right here. So we can kind of embed or make dependent ones. So I'll go a distance at a slope of 0.5 at a slope of 0%. And then let's do one more. This will be the lip of gutter or the flange of gutter. We're going to attach not to the back but to the parent in this case. And it's going to go to the left side of it. And we'll go 2 feet at a 2%. Finally, if I look at the formatting options in here, I can choose what style everything will use. In fact, we can choose a default. And then in here we'll choose curb, and then the site will go building site, and then I can just force all these to follow the default. Now if I save out of this, here's that curb family in the main screen. I can even spell out my surface as well as my break line settings that should be configured for these. We'll set that to 0.2. I'll hit OK. I'm going to click Run for this family, and what we'll see create in the background are a lot of additional feature lines, as well as them all being added to the surface. If I close out of this, you'll see it's in the same surface. Okay, now just like that pond, if I change those parent feature lines, the child feature lines will update with it. So any changes in grading, be it high or low points, changes in the geometry, you name it, everything will be reflected. Now, as I said, there's similar applications and subdivisions. Okay, I won't get into all of that here, but AutoGrader, what it's about is taking what is normally tedious site grading workflows and automating them in a rules-based workflow. Let's take a look at another tool. This one's called Label Genie. And let's say we have some lots laid out here and we need to label all of the lot lines. And maybe even need to do it differently. The right-of-way needs to be different than the side lot lines, whatever the case may be. This is normally a pretty tedious process. Well, with Label Genie, we can come into here and we can label entire drawings at once. based on a set of styles and parameters we set. So for example, I can come in here and I can say let's label the current drawing, though I could label additional ones. We'll label all of model space, and then what kind of label type do I want? You can see there's a whole host of different Civil 3D and AutoCAD labels. I'm going to grab line and curve. We're going to attach these to polylines. And what I can actually do is choose this and then read a layer from an object on the screen and say let's label everything on the side lot lines layer. Okay? We're going to label the segments, both the lines and the curves. And then finally on the formatting tab I can choose my styles. Those look good to me, including the layer setting. I'll hit add to this. It's going to tell me 121 labels are going to be created. I'll hit yes. And of course, if I look at this, all the labels come in automatically. Okay. What if it's MTEX labeling? MTEX we use for labeling just about anything that the standard Civil 3D labels don't work for. So we're going to label polylines. And in this case, we'll grab the layer called full lots. I can even click on check here, and it'll read that there's 124 polylines in there. I'm going to insert this at the centroid, and then because this is MTEX, it's not simply just about a style, but I can spell out AutoCAD fields that should be added to this piece of MTEX. And I can put in custom text here, maybe it's space SF, and then down here, what are my styles to choose from, what is my display height, display width, all of that formatting I can spell out right here, and it'll generate pieces of MTEX for me automatically. Let's click Add Update. 125 labels of MTEX just like that. Okay. Again, everything's dynamic so that if there's changes to anything, I simply run Label Genie again, like maybe the formatting wasn't correct on this. Maybe my standard is to have s.f. add update labels, update 125 labels, boom, there we go. Okay. Just about all the labeling in your projects can be automated in this way. Station offset labels, surface spot labels. Didn't even get into that, but there's a ton of tedious work there. Okay, multi-leaders, you name it, across all different project types, be it design side or survey side, Label Genie can automate a lot of this. Let's move on to pipe networks. Okay, with Pipe Designer, what we can do is we can pick an entire pipe run like this in Profile or Plan View and load it into an Excel type interface. And it's a dynamic interface such that if I make changes in here, I can simply hit apply and everything will update. So for example, setting some slopes. I can press and drag and set slopes for all the pipes at once, just like you might do in Excel. If I hit apply to this, you'll see that change down here. Okay. What about other options here, like my sump? Maybe those are supposed to be zeroed out. And same with my drop, those should be 0.1. Notice that some of these are highlighted red. It's because they're violating the rules assigned to those parts. The minimum drop is violated in this case. If you update those, the highlighting will go away. If I hit apply now, you'll see that change right back here. Okay. And there's some other automation techniques too, like I can read the rules themselves. If I click this, it'll assign all these slope values based on the pipe diameter. And that's just based on the native rules I have assigned. If I apply that, now I have my optimum design. I can even interpolate slopes between certain structures or pipes, or I can set a minimum cover. So those of you using water main design workflows with pipe networks, you'll notice how kind of clumsy it is. I can use set min cover to manage pressure-based systems through pipe network tool sets. There's a few other pipe network tools here that really kind of round out the shortcomings in pipe networks. There's a multiple parts swapper. I can pick any parts, plan or profile, and swap them all at once. There's a parts tagger. It'll auto-populate things like casting or reference surface or description across any number of parts across your project all at once. Let's talk corridors a bit. Corridors are very powerful tools, but when it comes to targeting it becomes a very time-intensive process, right? Assigning targets to our corridor, especially when we think about something like conditional subassemblies. There's a lot of targets involved. And while we can come in here and assign a layer, the problem is that you have to keep coming back to this interface to say either read that layer again or add this target object. And what we want to do instead is to be able to kind of define a target mapping that's dynamic to my project. And so that's where Corridor Mapper comes into play. If I run this, what you'll see is a similar looking interface, but everything in one screen. And so now for that lane or that conditional subassembly, I can simply choose a layer, and Corridor Mapper will remember this mapping. In fact, if they're even named the same, I can click Auto Map Layers up here, and it'll automatically map multiple layers for me. They don't have to be named the same, but you can if you want to. So just like that, I'm assigning a lot of different targets at once, 33 targets. I'll hit yes to this. And what we'll see happen in the background here is all those targets assigned at once. So the parking lanes, the driveways, you can see that that driveway curb and driveway was now inserted based on my conditional subassemblies. Okay. Now the beauty of this is that everything is dynamic. Those layer mappings stay in place. So that if there's changes to anything in my project, the design changes, maybe the scope extends, right? When that happens, we've got more target objects to create, to move, you name it. So if I grab some of these, let's say there were more driveways to model down here, okay? Those are on the correct layer. You have to choose what layer these land on anyway. Now with Corridor Mapper, those layers are already assigned. It remembers that. So I can just click Auto Map Targets. Before we had 33 targets, and now I've got 45. I click Yes, and we'll see all these driveways modeled just that quickly. I don't have to go back there and assign all those objects again. So that's Corridor Mapper. A few other corridor tools. We can split corridors in two. It'll maintain all your targets, all your settings, and actually split it into two. Then we can do the opposite, Corridor Merger. So maybe you're splitting things to quantify things into two different projects or two different phases, or maybe you can merge things together because your approach to how you're modeling out your corridor has changed. There's no way to do that natively. Corridor Splitter and Merger will handle that for you. Data Wizard is a very robust tool. Perhaps it's just a simple quantity takeoff. Data Wizard can handle that as well. Maybe I want to scan this drawing, just this current one here, for blocks and feature lines and hatches. Okay? And I want to pull areas and 2D lengths and counts from that information, and I want to export all of that to Excel. There's all my shrubs, my lights counted up, okay, my concrete curb and gutter, the total length, and then areas summarized for different parts of my project. Okay. I scanned just the one drawing here, but it works across multiple drawings at once. You can even save templates like you do with Label Genie to be reused on other projects or other drawings. Let's talk plan production a bit more. Sheet Generator will actually manage all my sheets for me, and it'll update them if things change in my project. So what does that look like? For example, let's go back to model space here. And perhaps the scope of the project changed. I need to shift all these sheets maybe 100 feet or so down the alignment. Okay, it could be any number of things. Okay, but this is what Sheet Generator does. It'll lay out your sheets for you. Okay, and it'll generate all those layouts for you, including the text on the tabs and everything. So with Sheet Generator, what we can do is, let's say this needs to shift. I can run my Plan View Shapes tool again. And instead of starting at 5250, we're going to start at 5350. Okay? And we're going to go all the way to the end of the project. I'm going to keep all the other settings the same. What you're going to see when I click Finish is all my sheets will shift by that 100 feet. Okay? I don't need that extra match line. I can just delete it. Now, how Sheet Generator works, it actually works with basic objects. These are simply polylines. These will represent our viewports. Okay? These are AutoCAD blocks. These represent the print area space on my sheets themselves. And then these yellow ones are placeholders for where the match lines will be. Now how yours looks, this works with your standards, your layers, you name it. It's really easy to make it work for your projects. Okay, now that all of that is shifted, my viewports obviously are all off 100 feet as well. I can simply run adjust profiles. I can grab all of these profiles at once, and I'm going to run adjust profile views. And I'm going to have it match to my plan view stations. Watch as all these stations shift when I click OK. Everything's shifted by that 100 feet. Okay, now I've got my model space stuff updated, but if I looked at my layouts, right, everything is off, right? Here's where it should be. This line right here, that's the way it is in model space. These viewports all need to be adjusted as well. So how does this work? You simply run the update layouts. Once you've adjusted that stuff in model space, run update layouts, and it'll fix all those sheets for you. So I'm going to do a plan and profile update. Here's all my layer and block standards. I'm going to adjust the match line stationing, sheet numbers and everything. Okay. And here it's telling me this is the new station range and here's the old. So it found the layout name and it's about to make this edit to them. I hit finish. It's going to even update my sheet set manager. Hit finish here, and what we're going to see in the background happens quickly. You'll see those viewports shift, the match lines update. Okay, it takes what could be hours of work, turns it into just seconds. Okay, so all that stuff is updated now. Okay, you can run that across the entire project. Maybe it was just the second half of the project that shifted. Whatever the case may be, you don't have to manually update those layouts or delete them and recreate them. And you also don't have to try to lock them in at 30% through the project. You can update these at any time. So those are all the productivity tools. I want to touch just a few minutes on some of the CAD management tools. First one here is called Line Type Manager. Instead of working with LIN files, where you have to edit things through this kind of goofy syntax, what we can do with Line Type Manager is load a LIN file right into it, and it'll actually read that and provide a preview for you. In fact, you can even edit those right in here or create new ones. So maybe I don't like the spacing around the word gas there. I can come in here and adjust that to be 0.15. You see it update on the fly as I edit it here. Hit OK. Okay, I can add line types to the drawing. I can even import line types from the drawing. I could pick these two here. It finds a fiber line and a fuel line. I'm going to hit OK to this, and we'll set a rotation parameter of relative to line, and then those get written to the LIN file. Okay, so perhaps you have line types that exist in DWGs, but you want to get those into your standard line type file. We can do that with Line Type Manager as well. I can save it. It all writes back to a native LIN file. Close out. Okay, another tool, Template Tracker. This is a great tool, probably one of the most popular tools in this suite, and it deals with layers, styles, and everything that are embedded across your drawing. For example, this layer right here, maybe we decide we don't need it anymore. I try to delete it, right? You get this message. Don't know where it's being used. Same with text styles, right? I try to delete it out of here. I can't delete this. I don't know where it's being used. Okay, most likely it's embedded in Civil 3D styles across our drawing and template. So with Template Tracker, what we can do, I open this window. I can go right to that layer I was talking about, and it turns out that's being used across many different styles. I can actually highlight them all. I can swap that out for a different layer, and it makes all those changes across all those styles at once. And then I can even delete that layer out if I choose. With the text styles, remember that SHR one? Turns out it's being used in block definitions. I mean, first I'd have to know it's in there, and then I have to go in every block definition if I simply just want to change it to a different style. So I can do that right here, and I can then delete out the SHR text style. Close. Okay. One other tool I want to mention to you in here This one's called Layer Boss, and it deals with the layer manager and object layer settings. So again, if you're managing your own templates in this way, outside of any Wista work, this makes all that much more easy for you. So take this layer manager. It's often a clumsy space to work in. I can export that entire thing to Excel. I can even take line types and plot styles with me. And when I do that, it's going to prompt me. I'll save this out, and I'm going to open up that spreadsheet right away. And what I get is a very smart export. In fact, here's all those line types that show up. Okay, my line weights, they show up in a drop down. Even my plot styles if you're using STBs. And all simple things like deleting layers. Okay. What about find replacing? That's not something we can easily do in Layer Manager at all. Maybe I just want to remove the word civil from all these layer descriptions. Okay. Even adding new layers. Let's add a new one here and see how that works. And then simple edits like colors, line types, becomes that much easier in here because we can press and drag, clipboard copy, you name it. Okay, let's save out of here. Let's go back to Civil 3D. Let's run a create edit DWG layers command. Now I'm going to browse out to that spreadsheet. I'm going to tell it to sync to drawing layers in the current drawing. And what it does on this screen is it tells me everything that's about to happen to my drawing. Here's the new layer. Here's updated layers. It highlights it green. And then those layers I try to delete, it even tells me you can't do that because they're being referenced somewhere. So this is where Template Tracker comes into play. In fact, it's even embedded right within this tool itself. I can launch Template Tracker in here. Remember all those styles that I was referenced in a different drawing? Okay, I can swap that out like we've done before. And when I close out, now that layer is slated for deletion. Okay, I don't have to use Template Tracker. I could just come in here and assign, say, a new layer to all of these, like that. And when I hit OK, all those changes will take place. All those colors, okay, that new layer is in here, all those changes pushed. Okay, so we can go to Excel, make any edits we want, and then update that stuff in our current template, make a new template, you name it. Now that workflow, take that and extrapolate that across all the major table interfaces in Civil 3D. Your object layers, okay, all of these settings, we can do it from Excel instead. What about the description key set, all your point codes? Okay, all of that, that's a major table. All of that can go to Excel. We can make all the edits there, including exports of styles and layers, and then bring it back and it'll update. And finally, the fourth major table in Civil 3D standards are your figure prefix databases. And that's for all your line work coding and what lines those survey figures, what layers and styles will be assigned to them. We can do all of that through Excel instead of working through this very clumsy, kind of glitchy interface. So that's everything I wanted to show you in the Sim Manager suite. Just a couple other things to touch on. We've got a lot of development going on at CTC. We've got an earthwork processor coming out soon. This is going to automate subgrade volume calculations for you in a lot of those site grading type projects where you've got variable subgrade depths. We've got Pipe Jammer coming out where you're going to be able to import and export pipe or pressure networks to Excel, run analyses there, and then bring them back and update your pipe network. We also have a tool called Clash Seeker. It's going to be robust clash detection, kind of like you may have seen with pipe networks, but you're going to be able to do this across all your design objects in your drawing, including pipe and pressure networks, feature lines, surfaces, corridors, solids, you name it. Lots of power, lots of flexibility there. So if you guys are wondering how you get this, you can download trials, free trials for this stuff. Sim Project Suite, the Sim Manager Free Suite. Just go to CTC Software. If you you have questions about licensing or anything, contact your CTC reseller. That is ATG in the US, who Kyle Groves works for, and we are close partners with. And our other close partner is SolidCAD in Canada, if you live in Canada. And if you're wondering about pricing and investment on this, it varies depending on the type you're buying and everything. But what I can tell you that is that if you use just a couple tools out of, say, the Sim Project Suite, you'll see ROI in a matter of weeks on this stuff, right? The pricing on this stuff is very cheap. We're talking few hundreds of dollars here to get users going on this stuff. So very effective tool sets for very affordable pricing. So thanks everyone for listening. With that, I want to turn it back to Kyle Groves to address any questions you might have. Thanks again.